This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Got a very busy show today. Lots coming up. Kind of taking advantage of the off week for the Winnipeg Jets to both talk some NHL and Jets at the break. John Matisz of The Score has got an interesting piece about potential NHL expansion, pros and cons of that. We'll get into that and his thoughts on the league at the break. And we'll also welcome in Brandon Rewucki for his thoughts on a number of hockey-related topics and, of course, the upcoming Super Bowl matchup. But we're really looking forward to bringing in the new manager of the Goldeyes, Logan Watkins. 34 years old, former major leaguer. We've been waiting to do this and figured this is a perfect week to get Logan on the program. So we're going to have that for you. And another visit with one of our friends from Sport Manitoba with It Takes a Community to Play. But listen, how's everybody feeling today? And I know people in the chat were thinking that I was maybe going to roll out the fur coat today. Unfortunately, it was short notice. My fur coats are all at the cleaners right now, so I couldn't pull it out. But Chris Streveler is back in blue and gold. The Bomber fans are fired up, as they should be. We'll talk about that signing, the significance of it, as well as the running back market right out of the gate with Michael Remis coming up right away. As I mentioned, the Streveler news sort of top billing today on the program. But an interesting night, couple big-time face plants by teams in the wild card race in the Western Conference going into the break. We'll talk about that and more. But again, 4 guests coming up, so we got an action-packed show. Great to see everybody here. Shout out to everybody in chat. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks, and welcome to the new subscribers as well. Just got a few more to get us up to 10.7, creeping closer to 11,000. Maybe we can do that in the next month or so before our 3rd anniversary on the 8th of March, which is also kind of a big day in the league as well. But listen, just before we get into it today, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make this program happen each and every day. The gang at Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, the Winnipeg Jets, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, Modern Man Barbershop, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club Whiskey, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Sport Manitoba, Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge, and of course we'll get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, get in here. How about that news from the Bombers? And by the way, I mean, when we saw the team tease the news earlier this morning with a fur coat and a cowboy hat in the Bomber locker room, everybody knew what was happening. But the deal is done, and the Strevolution is back in the peg.
We had heard rumors for a while that this was happening, and they put out the tweet today. Let's give the Bombers some props. They just wrote soon at 9:59 p.m. The fur coat and the cowboy hat tweet. Everyone knew it's happening. Just didn't know how soon. Like, what's soon? I'm like, are we going to find out tomorrow? But they didn't hold us waiting for much longer. Darren Cameron and the Bombers making it official. It must have been like half hour later or something. So exciting stuff. And then Jeff Hamilton reporting, I think it was, I can't switch screens, 120,000 plus incentives. They did put in the release that they signed quarterback Chris Streveler. If you thought he was going to play running back or something, we can talk about how he's going to be used in the offense. But just, very exciting that he's coming back. We've been following him, his journey to the NFL the last couple of years, and here he is back in Winnipeg. And Jeff also notes, and he said it on the show, that the belief is he can make money off the field given his local celebrity status. I don't know. I'm kind of curious what kind of opportunities are here for that, but pretty cool that he's coming back to Winnipeg.
Yeah, this is awesome news. I mean, the team traded Drew Brown. They knew he'd be gone. Drew Brown earned a contract worthy of a guy that will be challenging and potentially being a starter for the Ottawa Red Blacks. But to get Strev back at 120 a year is such a big win on so many levels. Like, listen, first and foremost, the dude is so popular in this city. It's going to be a huge hit with the fans. You know what a beloved teammate he was within that group, many of whom are still here from the 2019 championship team. He will be welcomed back with open arms. And you know who I think might be the most excited about this all, Reem, is Buck Pierce. Because Chris Streveler is such a unicorn in that he allows, even in a quote-unquote backup quarterback role, he has such a unique skill set that he will be able to allow the Bombers to dominate on short yardage, as they've done for a number of years behind that great offensive line, but also put in Streveler packages that I'm sure will be used probably every game. He'll get in for some time. Maybe take a little bit of a load off Zach Collaros. But it's also particularly important, if you ask me, because of the uncertainty of Brady Oliveira's future and what happens to the running back position with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And, I should pull this up because Derek Taylor popped this up a little bit earlier on today. We all know about about Streveler and how he is running the football. DT so he said he's a fraction behind William Stanback as the most effective runner in 2019. Now, there's a value, and I'm not sure exactly how this is calculated, to be honest with you. These are some big numbers from the big brains of the analytics world. But in 2019, Streveler carried the ball 75 times, had a value per rush of 0.7 per, and was 47% above average. And again, that's adjusted for down and distance. With the uncertainty of the running back position, I think we all have to be prepared that Brady Oliveira might not be back. I think we all hope that he's back, and I certainly think that what we just said about Strev, with his ability to make some additional money, endorsement-wise, appearances, all of that in Winnipeg is greater than it would be elsewhere. For Brady Oliveira, I would say the exact same thing. Outside of maybe Saskatchewan, and I don't even want to bring up the idea or the concept of Brady Oliveira signing with the Riders, but I will tell you that opposed to the other 7 markets, if Brady did sign with Saskatchewan, he would be welcomed as a hero in that community, kind of them getting one over on the rival Bombers. And I think there'd be plenty of endorsements for him there as well. But Remo, what do you think this does to the Bombers' situation at running back? Does it diminish their need to bring back a Brady Oliveira when you have a guy like Streveler, although technically not a running back, a guy that can be so effective in the running game, moving the football, moving the chains, and keeping it on the field? And I guess the other second part of that is just the running back market in general, with Brady hoping for big bucks. But Stanback, Carey, Ouellette, I'm missing one, all going to free agency right now. And, a surplus of top-level running back talent available on the free agent market, apparently.
Yeah. Before I get into that, I'll just read this tweet from Dave Naylor. Says, what opened the door for Streveler to return to the Bombers is no CFL team was willing to offer him starter money, which surprised Naylor, didn't shock him. Naylor says he'll have a role in the offense, young enough to perhaps inherit the number 1 job someday. And I think maybe we've seen running back the last couple of years, teams, at least in the the NFL, are opting to go cheap. It's kind of a running backs have taken exception to this, but it's kind of a replaceable position where a lot of it depends on your O-line, and there's a lot of good running backs in there where you can plug in the backup sometimes, and they can be just as good. And giving your backup quarterback $120,000. I think he's going to be a guy they use in short yardage, and maybe you're looking for a different type of running back. Now, Brady was kind of the bruiser in between the tackles guy, though he showed he was pretty good in the receiving game and could get outside as well. But maybe they look for, a running back to complement Streveler up the middle. I'm curious how much they will use him. Will they use him, short yardage? Because they were the best in short yardage with Prukop. It was automatic. And will they use him throwing? How much throwing is he going to do? How much running outside of short yardage and the short yardage third down? There's
way more than in the past. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like BA with a I love you BA, but this is a terrible take. Of course, Huss, he's a backup QB who doesn't play running back. He has nothing to do with RB. I totally disagree. When you have a Chris Streveler and you can put him in a rushing package with designed runs, with a player that can do what he does that we've seen before. I just rolled out the effectiveness of Streveler running the ball when he was last here. That does give you the ability to not lean on a running back as much. Now, listen, if you ask me what I want, it would be a backfield that has Brady Oliveira in it. And can you imagine, the options, the running options, if you had Streveler in with Brady in the backfield? I think Buck Pierce is pretty excited about adding plenty of new wrinkles into it. But, Streveler is coming in as a backup quarterback, yes. Listen, when the Bombers need to throw the ball, Zach Collaros is going to be in there. But Chris Streveler adds a dimension to the running game that has not been there the last couple of years as they've relied entirely on Brady Oliveira. And I think that it is put it this way, if Oliveira doesn't come back and the Bombers take a step back in the talent level of the running back, I think this signing today softens the blow considerably. If that happens, we all hope it doesn't.
Yeah, you'd like to see Brady back, but as we mentioned yesterday, there's a number of pretty good running backs out there. So even if you did miss out, it seems to be a lot of alternatives and limited dollar amount for all those guys. So that's when CFL free agency opens. They have this legal tampering period coming up very soon. I'm sure during that period you'll have an idea who's going to sign where. That seems to be what happens, but very interesting about this running back market, and seems to be alternative. They did sign Johnny Augustine too, Hassan.
Yeah, Johnny's back. We've kind of the opportunity. We've
kind of been waiting for him to be given, more of a role, because whenever he's in there, I think that he's excelled. So I'm curious where he fits in. And they did tweet out, he's been available. He's suited up for every game. I think that was in the press release. So, he's been solid too. So this Bomber starting to get excited. Us, they CFL sent out a timeline of events here coming up. They got the communication window starting February 4, February 13, free agency. They got a couple combines in March, including March 19 to 24. The CFL combine is here. The draft April 30, and then rookie camps in May. And I'll be honest, it kind of feels like March, April, May outside right now here in Winnipeg. So, time to starting to get over the Grey Cup loss and really beginning to look ahead to next season as we hit free agency.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a wild few weeks in the Canadian Football League. Hey, shout out to Tika J. He said, hey, boys, watching from Alberta. Thanks for all your hard work and bringing us all the best Jets news. Appreciate everything y'all do. Go Jets, go. Thanks, Tico. Appreciate that. Remo, I'm going to send this question to you, but I will also put it out to the chat. And actually, this might be an interesting poll question to throw up as well. Why not question of the day for Not Autocorp? Now with Chris Streveler back, knowing that Streveler is here and what he adds to the running game, if the Blue Bombers can only sign one of Brady Oliveira or Dalton Schoen, and again, if they don't sign Brady Oliveira, they will sign somebody else. But let's think that there's a drop-off of the talent of the number one running back. Who are you signing? Who is your priority? If you can only have one, is it Dalton Schoen or is it Brady Oliveira? Where do you come out on that?
No, I don't want to pick. This is too hard.
That's a great question.
This
That's
is
a great
so
question.
hard. Like, I don't want to dump on Brady and running backs, but I'm gonna go with. See, this ain't Dalton Show, but they're already pretty solid. You have Kenny Lawler, you have Nick Dempsey, you have Drew Wolotarski. Do you need Dalton Show? But he's been the best in the league the last couple of years, so it's a passing league. I gotta go Dalton Schoen. I think I gotta go with him. I'm sorry, Brady's been on the show, does great work with the dog rescue, but it says pick one. I'm going.
Yeah,
Schoen.
listen. I mean, and again, I'm making this a hypothetical. This is a very difficult question to ask because
I'm squirming.
I mean, we love both of those guys. They've both been huge parts of this team. But the reason I bring that up is that, as we get closer to February, and the tampering period that's going to begin on the 4th, which is next Sunday, or I guess whatever, Sunday or Monday. I mean, we have to realize that as great as the Bombers have done a job the last couple of years of bringing the band back and basically keeping this team together, with how successful all of these players have been, the salary cap makes that probably impossible. Now, I'm still holding out hope that both of those guys are back. But I have to admit, I think I lean Schoen as well. I mean, I think that the loss of Schoen at wide receiver, like his ability and his connection with Collaros, especially once Zach's out of the pocket, is special. The numbers speak for themselves. And I do think, and again, this isn't about replacing an all-star in Brady Oliveira or an all-star in Dalton Schoen. But as we've talked about with the other running backs that are available, I think the fact that players from outside of Winnipeg in the Canadian Football League, looking at what the Bombers have done the last number of years, would love to come here and join this team. I think when you break down the dollars and cents to it, I think there actually might still be some value on that running back board if Brady does sign to the highest bidder somewhere else. And I think Dalton Schoen probably is the priority. And as I said, it's an impossible question for Bomber fans because they love both of these guys so much. But I think today's news changes that a little bit in the fact that, if you go a little cheaper at the running back position with Johnny Augustine and somebody else that you sign, having Streveler, who can do more than just the 1 and 2 yard sneaks, I think it does add another dimension to the running game. And maybe, listen, they've been working on this for a while, and we knew that they've always been prioritizing Dalton Schoen and Brady Oliveira to try to get those guys back. So I'm not saying that it because of this, the Bombers go a different direction. But I do think that if it comes down to it, for my money, it's Dalton Schoen. Let's see what people have to say. I knew this would be a very, very split question today. Let's see here. We've got Brady. Okay, so Brady Oliveira is now at 62%. Let's get this whole thing out. So Brady is 62 and Dalton Schoen is 37. Interesting. I guess that's gone sort of back and forth. We've got 99 votes already in chat. If you haven't voted already, throw it in there. We've got, Strev holds for kicks. I mean, anybody can hold for kicks. You can get the punter in holding for kicks, I would say. Get her done. WST, best daytime sports talk show. Get her done. Great take. That is definitely an approved take. Appreciate you. Waiter says Brady. Schichter says, ooh, Schoen, I think. MC Stormy, Brady all day long. Fred Schneider, Schoen. It's a Mayroll. Who's all available at running back again, WST? Well, Brady Oliveira is available. Stanback's available. Ouellette from the Argos is available. I love that guy. Kadeem Carey is available. And of course, Morrow as well. So you got 5-star running backs on the table. And, if there's big money available to 1 or 2, I mean, if there's a guy that has to take a little bit less and come into a Winnipeg and allow the Bombers to sign a guy like Dalton Schoen, I'm not sure that wouldn't be bad. The one thing that would suck, Remis, I think we can all agree, is the fact that Brady's a hometown guy, is turned into such an incredible player, an incredible ambassador for the team and the city. I mean, if you took personalities out of it and it was just player A, player B, and we kind of laid out this situation, I think probably people would maybe be a little bit more on the shown side of things. But that's not reality. He is a Winnipeg kid. He is from Oak Park. He did come and play here, and has been such a big part of these teams the last couple of years that it is hard to say no. But at the same time, he hasn't been able to get a deal done right now with the Bombers. So it is definitely a possibility. 59% right now for Brady, 41% for Dalton. And I think that honestly is basically 50-50. And then there's an extra few points for the loyalty and love a hometown guy gets.
That's what makes it so hard. You don't want to send away the hometown guy who's so great in the community. I mean, especially after coming, the torch being carried from Andrew Harris to Brady, and you just, don't re-sign him. It feels wrong to do that. It feels wrong. And I'm seeing a comment from Dylan. She says, receivers can be found. I think, apparently there are a lot of running backs as well available. So this is a tough call, tough decisions for Kyle Walters to make this offseason. And hopefully it ends up like the Jets, because we had fun debating Streveler or Hellbuck. We're like, F, marry, kill. Which one are you going to do? And and they ended up keeping them both. So, maybe you can figure some way to manage the salary cap here and keep both of them. But, interesting when how many teams have $120,000 backup quarterback? Their salaries aren't public, but is that a common thing?
I'm pretty sure Drew Brown was making at least that last year.
Yeah, that's what it is. Okay.
I'm pretty sure on that.
So
listen, the one thing that I haven't mentioned that I probably should have earlier is the ratio. And having a Canadian running back doing what Brady Oliveira does allow you some luxuries in other areas. I mean, listen, if it's Johnny Augustine taking over, he's Canadian passport as well. And some would say that he deserves that opportunity after sort of waiting in the wings and being pretty good when he's been in. But, I mean, Johnny isn't Brady. So, and listen, it's an incredibly difficult question. I get people how they've got the angst on the other side. But I guess, if we look at, it's Brady 56 right now. Certainly one thing that does definitely bode in Brady's favor if you're making that tough decision is the fact that he does have the Canadian passport, never mind being a Winnipeg guy. But the big story today, Chris Streveler's back, and we'll look to hopefully get him on the show early next week once everything is made official. Tomorrow at the press conference, depending on what time it's at, we'll dig in and maybe get a little bit of audio for them. But we've already talked to DC and looking forward to getting Strev back on WST sometime very soon. Listen, we're going to bring in John Matisz coming up from The Score in a minute and get into some All-Star break NHL talk. But Remo, speaking of the All-Star break, how about the face plants last night of the St. Louis Blues losing 1-0 at home to the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Kraken losing to the San Jose Sharks? That old adage about guys being checked out and already with their bags packed and 1 foot on the plane going into the break, never been more on display than last night with those two teams desperately needing points in the wild card race.
Maybe the worst night of hockey in a while. 2 games, one game, the Blue Jackets win 1-0. The other game, the Sharks win 2-0. So if you're on both underdogs, you probably did pretty well. And yeah, St. Louis, we talked about how hot they've been, but even they were commenting that I was watching a bit of the Blues game. They were saying, it seems like these two teams are ready to hop on the plane and start the All-Star break. And I don't know, the Blues, they've been scoring so well. You can't score against the Blue Jackets, who's, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. But hey, anyone can win on any given night, and you look at the standings now, Here they are. The the Blues do have that second wild card spot, 54 points tied with the Kings, although they've played a couple more games. The Kraken, they've played 3 more games than the Kings. They're a bit behind. They're 52 points. The Kings do play Nashville. They're battling there for that wild card spot. We talked about that yesterday. That is a big game on tonight's schedule. So those two teams needed those wins, and yeah, there's the Sharks. They're at the bottom. Man, the Chicago, could they get the top pick again this year? We're not quite in draft lottery simulator territory.
Absolutely could. They absolutely could. They're I would suggest that they are the favorite right now to get that number 1 pick. But again, there is the lottery. By the way, shout out to Howard Ginn. Yo Huss, much love from Doha. Yes, Doha. Always remember my 2 weeks in Doha for the World Cup. And it is, if I'm not mistaken, just about 11 o'clock there in Doha right now. But yeah, man, getting shut out at home. I think I did say, I'm not sure about the maturity of that Blues team. They won 5 in a row. They'd won 3 straight in OT. Yeah, you're at home, 1 more game before the break, and you got Columbus in a game that you assume to win. You have to win, and they put up a 0 spot. That's a tough look for Kyrou Thomas and the new leaders of that young Blues team. There are 3 games tonight in the NHL. Remis just mentioned that Nashville Kings game. That is going to be it's a huge game. If Nashville can win, they just gain 2 points on LA. Obviously, the games in hand won't change. But we'll touch on that one. The Sens coming off that big comeback win over the Predators on Monday, taking on Detroit. And then the Sharks coming off that win last night against the Ducks. I have a feeling the Ducks will definitely be checked out before this game. Well, we'll get into that on the Coolbet lines a little bit later on. But John Matisz coming up in just a minute. By the way, gang, Winnipeg Whiskey Festival is coming up. We had a meeting this morning. There is an event that we are going to be involved in on February 29th. Tomorrow on the program, we are going to have details on tickets. It is going to be very, very exclusive. I believe the capacity for this whiskey event is 40. There's a game that night. We're going to be watching it. It is going to be really fun. But if you are someone that loves or is interested in whiskey and the Whiskey Festival, tomorrow's show will have the link. We're going to give first crack to some WSTers to get the tickets that weren't already taken by the sponsor, and it's going to fill up right away. So mark that down. February 29th, tomorrow on the program, we will have details and a link if you want to jump on tickets and join us at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. Full details tomorrow and the link to buy tickets. There is your heads up. Shout out to our friends at Canadian Club. Really looking forward to this event. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, all the Canadian Club favorites available right now at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And of course, Canadian Club, the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who we've just been discussing. Got to give a shout out to our friends at Manitoba Battery. Tomorrow is the first day of February. February is a huge week for Manitoba Battery as they open up a brand new second location on Dover Court in the south side of the city. Never been more easy to shop local and get the best price in town on batteries, because even if that's not near you, Donnie and the gang are going to deliver those batteries to you at the best price in town for free anywhere inside the perimeter for any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. So we'll have grand opening information and sale information when the doors are officially open on Dover Court. But in the meantime, for all your battery needs, manitobabattery.com, 783-8787. And you could also visit them in person at the OG location at 1026 Logan Avenue. And hey, thanks to our friends at Modern Man Barbershop for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. I got a nice cut last week from my guy Cordell over on Pembina. But Modern Man's everywhere. Conveniently located throughout the city, fellas, with 8 locations, including the newest locations at Pembina by Bishop, that's where I was, or over on the east side on Plessy Road. And guys, Modern Man has you covered with everything: haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Make an appointment and book your look via modernmanbarber.com at any of the 8 locations. And while you're at it, give them a follow on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. All right, John Matisz coming up. We will talk Jets, but speaking of the Jets, we'll get Remis to give us a All-Star break update. I think we've got a few more Insta photos of what some of the fellas are doing. But do not forget, the Jets back at it next week, starting it on the road for a couple games, including the 8th against the Pittsburgh Penguins, the 6th against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then right here hosting the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Sidney Crosby, living legend in the year, arguably should be right up there for MVP this year with the way that he's played, even at his age. Don't miss a chance to see Sid and one of the top teams in the Western Conference, the Winnipeg Jets, on the 10th. They've also got the Valentine's Day game. Great. Hey, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Great date night with your special someone and see the Jets take on the Sharks. And then that big one against the Minnesota Wild, Tuesday, February 20th. WinnipegJets.com/tickets. While you're at it, consider getting into a package for the rest of the season, booking your playoff tickets, or maybe get back into seasons with some friends or for your business at a great time with the stretch of the season still to come. And, of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's all there at WinnipegJets.com. All right, let's talk some pucks right now. We kind of let off with some big football story in town, but there still is lots to get to when it comes to the National Hockey League at the offseason. And we welcome in our guy, John Matisz from The Score. John, what's up? How are you?
Fellas, I'm doing well. Thinking about coming to Winnipeg for that whiskey event. Not gonna lie, that got me excited. I started fantasizing about the night that could be. But no, I'm joking, of course. But that sounds like a great event, all things considered.
Yeah, we're gonna have the game on. We're gonna have some the experts coming in telling us about a bunch of different whiskeys, some eats. And again, the games have been great, and that's a big one for the Jets, taking on the Dallas Stars that night, a team they haven't had a lot of success so far. Let's talk about a few of the big stories. And you know what? Listen, I kind of went off last week on everything that happened with this Hockey Canada situation, the players leaving, all taking leaves. And I mean, we knew what was happening. I know it was made official yesterday with the players being officially released, the names. But just before we get into the National Hockey League, I'm reading that this means, like, in all likelihood, in Ontario court, like, these guys might not even get into a courtroom until 2026. Now, I know most of them, I believe all of them actually, are RFAs. Are these guys' careers on hold? I mean, potentially over, depending on what happens. But how do you see this going over the course of the next year and a half or 2 years for these players who will not have the opportunity to have their day in court, but have the clock ticking on their professional careers?
I mean, I think what's happened with Alex Fermenton and the Ottawa Senators is a good template. I mean, Clearly the Senators knew something or felt like they wanted to get ahead of it. I don't know what. I don't want to speculate, but this is going back, I think, 2 years now.
That's why this guy wasn't in the NHL.
Correct. Yeah, he's been in Switzerland, and his contract talks as an RFA kind of dragged on. The next thing you know, he was in Europe. And people connected the dots, of course, but there was no official charge. There were nothing official to talk about in regards to that. But, it's pretty obvious right now. So I would imagine that these other players, the other 4 players, will have an opportunity to do something similar. I use opportunity in air quotes here because it's not, it's more of a punishment than anything. Because if you're an NHL team, I don't know how you can bring them in for the next, like you said, 2026. So that would be the next 2 seasons, not including this one, that they would be off the ice. And the fact that all of them are RFAs, I believe they're all 25. I think that makes it certainly easier versus being under contract, and that complicates everything as far as the union, the players' union getting involved, agents getting involved, and it being this dispute that's, a sideshow to the real problem that night in London. So It's tough. I mean, if you're an NHL team, I think you just have to essentially break ties, given that they've officially been charged now. This isn't rumors. This isn't innuendo. And sure, they haven't been sentenced. They still have to go through the court system. But just the way these things tend to go in the hockey world and in other sports, they're at that point where they will be on the outside looking in.
I have to think that all these teams knew that something like this was potentially coming. And I guess it was somewhat of a head in the ground. When it happens, we'll deal with it. Whether that's the way you'd want your team handling a player like that, I guess can be determined by the fans. I think as someone here in Winnipeg, with the Jets, I think no matter what, I mean, you're just happy that, you don't have to deal with that. And I mean, if you're a Devils fan, if you're a Flyers fan, you're probably feeling somewhat conflicted. The Calgary situation, though, is interesting. And that, the one thing I think a lot of people, and I talked about this last week on the show, right? Not on the Monday show after we heard that Dylan Dubé was taking his leave for quote unquote mental health. But the second that Carter Hart took his leave, I think we all saw the writing on the wall at what was coming down. And at that point, we doubled back to see what Calgary had put out. Mm-hmm. And now Calgary has made a statement that said they were unaware of this. I realize there is a ton of skepticism about that as to how realistic that can be. And I don't know how this works. I mean, if a player goes to the team and says, hey, I've got something going on, I need a mental health break, I guess the team, maybe knowing what it was about, just said, okay, fine, and went with that. But how do you see this? Like, this is a new management group in Calgary. Is this going to be something that, I'm not necessarily saying they pay the price for, but how big of a deal is that? Because the mental health is a big thing right now. You want to support people as much, but let's face it, that message that they put out, knowing what we know now 10 days later, has left a real bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, and I don't think has painted the organization in a very good light, even with the denial yesterday, whether it's the fault of their own or not.
Yeah, I mean, the optics are pretty bad because, I mean, the guy in charge there, Craig Conroy, has been with the team for a number of years. He didn't just walk right into this new job he has, right? He's been around the team. He's been around Dubé. He would have certainly heard that there was a possibility Dubé was going to get wrapped up in this and that he was one of the players that would be going to court. So I don't know if it's one of those things where Dubé tried to play it off as a mental health absence, and they maybe didn't quite, merge the timelines of what was going to happen with these charges with the timing of his request. So I don't know if that's just, PR fumbling the ball. Is that Craig Conroy himself fumbling the ball? But there's certainly a disconnect there. And it only took, 24 hours for that leave to not be about mental health. Like, it's not like he's been gone for 2 weeks and then it's like, oh, he also has this other thing going on. It's pretty obvious that he had one thing going on. So it's tough. I mean, I wouldn't say that's like a fireable offense, but if you're trying to build, your reputation in the fan base, trying to convince them of, even just convince them of hockey moves, I mean, you're losing a bit of that faith because they go, what were you doing here with this leave and with this statement, and supporting this guy for a quote unquote mental health issue when there was much more going on behind the scenes that the team absolutely should have at least known parts of. They should have been suspicious at least. So it's strange. I find it very odd because they were the only team that did that, right? Every other team kept it really plain, really simple, personal reasons, some sort of leave of absence, but they didn't attach any sympathetic language to it. But the Flames did, and it's unfortunate. You make a really good point because Patrick Laine a few days ago takes this absence to do with mental health. That's very important. I think 99% of the people out there in the world go, good for you, Patrick. Get yourself together, and then you come back when you're okay. I think people generally have really come around to appreciating that these guys are humans. And it's just unfortunate that places like the player assistance program, which I think has done a lot of good, gets kind of lumped in with something that Dubé did. Whether it's sort of on purpose or not, you sort of associate them both with each other.
It does everything that I think the league, the PA, people working together are trying to do to promote the well-being and mental health of their players. It does it such a great disservice if this is used as some sort of a shield for something so reprehensible as what these guys are being charged with. And obviously, this is something that over the course of the next couple of years, will be a topic, and I'm not sure whether these guys ever play again. To be honest, I mean, I think all of us should be more concerned about the victim here, and how this plays out. But I will tell you, I mean, as someone that hasn't, been dragged to court for anything, it was sort of stunning when you hear that this is January of 2024. And it's in all likelihood 2 years from now that this is actually going to be heard in a court of law. And it's a somewhat unique situation when you talk about individuals charged that are in professions with such a tight timeline on when you're actually there to do it. But I don't think there's many people feeling sorry for anybody of those that had their name called to court and has been officially charged with that. John, let's kind of pivot over to one of your latest pieces in the at thescore.com on potential expansion. And, it was the day that we heard all of these 5 players, and within about 5 minutes, there was a release, and that kind of set me off, to be honest, last week. I mean, I thought that it was, speaking of distasteful, you want to talk about the sleight of hand done by the league, and then frankly the water carrying by a lot of guys that knew what the big story was, but all of a sudden they're talking about this team in Utah under the guise of expansion. And I've been pretty clear, I don't think this is about expansion at all. I think this is about the Coyotes and and listen, we here in Winnipeg know about it more than anyone because of the stealth way that True North and the Chipman Group worked behind the scenes to get all of their ducks in a row. So when the opportunity was provided, they were ready to go. And when I read that press release, the one thing that stood out to me was simply, we are ready to host a team right now. And to me, that was a shot at Arizona. I know the NHL loves the Arizona market. Why wouldn't they? I think there still is a lot of potential for hockey to succeed in the desert like it's done in a bunch of other places. But it wasn't doing it out in Glendale. It's certainly not doing it in the Mullet Arena right now, and it's costing the league and the players a lot of money right now. Are you sort of with me that this is a power play on the Coyotes? And I would bet right now that the Coyotes will be in Utah next year. And then at that point, then they can start talking about massive numbers for expansion franchises in the future, and an expansion franchise that could potentially in 2, 3, 4 years, if they ever get their shit together and get an arena in a proper spot that will work, Arizona, I would imagine, would probably be at the top of the list, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the thing, is Arizona on paper is a really just top drawer market as far as, you've got this huge population, you've got affluent people, you've got a guy like Austin Matthews as a spokesperson. There's real promise there, and they've been there for 25 years. It's wild that they've had such controversy around, their ownership, around their buildings, and the NHL hasn't given up yet. But to circle back on your entry into this topic, I think that the Salt Lake statement that was put out there, and let's put aside the whole timing of it for this discussion right now in terms of, it coming out right around the World Junior news. But the fact that it came out at all, the fact that they released a statement told me the NHL is on board with this. And not necessarily that like, hey, we're going to move there next year, or hey, we're going to move there in 2 years. But you do not put out a statement like that without Gary Bettman giving you the thumbs up. Like we learned it for Jim Balsillie.
I was just about to say, this isn't Balsillie trying to make his power play.
This is everyone who has ever tried to buy a franchise in the NHL has learned from Jim Balsillie. He died for them in that sense. And so Bettman signing off on this publicity that Salt Lake is drumming up. And their owner apparently is a very well respected, deep pocketed. And you mentioned that story that I did on expansion from about a month ago. And one thing that I can't remember exactly who it was. I talked about 15 people for the story. I think it was an academic. I think it was an economics professor. He said one thing you need to consider with expanding or bringing in new owners is, sure, like they got to have the money to join the league. They got to have the rink in place, but also the owner himself. Like, is he bringing value in non-hockey ways? So is he a tech entrepreneur who can potentially help you do X, Y, and Z in the future? I don't know. Does he have a concessions business, and all of a sudden he's working with every team in the league to make a greater profit with your popcorn, stuff like that? Like, what's this guy bringing to the table? And by all accounts, Ryan Smith, the guy in Salt Lake, he comes from a tech background. He can bring plenty to the table. So I think that's pretty interesting. Sort of the fact that they're coming out and saying we're ready. Like, let's bring a team here. And the NHL's in a real sweet spot here. Like, as far as their revenues are through the roof. They were bragging about last month about how they're on pace to exceed $6 billion in revenues this year. A new franchise would command an expansion fee of at least $1 billion, maybe $2 billion. And Bettman's job at its core is to serve his owners. And what does that mean? That means increasing franchise values over time. Well, guess what? From 2022 to 2023, franchise values across the league on average went up 29%, according to Forbes and Sportico, like two very reputable media organizations. So that alone sets them up really well. And also Vegas and Seattle are tremendous advertisements for not only prospective owners getting excited, but also for the league getting excited. I mean, Vegas and Seattle, forget their on-ice success for a second. Off-ice, they've been massive drivers of revenue. I heard that Seattle, like, to get a box there for a season, they're charging, close to $1 million. So that's just a random thing to throw out there. But like, both of those cities have really embraced their team. So there's pros and cons to all this, whether it's Salt Lake getting the Arizona team, and then you're keeping it at 32 and moving on with your life as a league. And there's also pros and cons to expanding to 33 or 34 teams. I don't know if you want to run through those or not, if we want to go down that avenue. But
well, for sure. I mean, I guess I would ask, is there enough talent to add, like, let's just say, to add 2 more teams? I mean, I don't think you'd want to have an odd number. So if you're going with 1, eventually you're probably getting 2.
Yes.
I'm sure there's some markets. I was in Kansas City a couple weeks ago. They got the beautiful Sprint Center. People talk about Quebec. It doesn't seem like the NHL has any interest in even entertaining that right now. There's Houston. We've heard Atlanta again. If the Coyotes move, Arizona would be certainly a market that they could do their due diligence, get an arena, and then start it. I mean, what are the pros and cons? But starting off, is there enough talent to make a 34-team league, or God forbid down the road 36 teams, realistic?
The real answer is we don't know. And I know that's like unsatisfying, but when you go from, say, 30 teams to 32, like we did with Vegas and Seattle, there was a risk there that the on-ice product would get diluted, that it would be significantly worse. I would say, big picture, it's maybe gotten slightly worse. Like, if you're watching a Tuesday game between the 25th and 29th team in the league, it's not great hockey. But I wouldn't say it's to a point where you're throwing your hands up and going, this league really screwed up by bringing in 2 more teams. But when you go to 33 and 34 teams, as you mentioned, you're bringing 23 new jobs on that 33rd team. And then if you double that, so then it'd be 46 if you're bringing in 2 new teams. So 46 players that aren't in the NHL right now would have a chance to get regular NHL action. That kind of scares me, like, on paper. But again, we don't know. Like, maybe you expand to 34 and it's fine, and it's actually 35 when things really drop off. So there's a great unknown there. And in talking to some people, there were kind of 2 ways to look at it. One was, the explosion of hockey in the U.S. over the last couple of decades has created all these different pockets where some talent is coming from. So, I don't know, Pittsburgh, Arizona, Anaheim. these places where before all the best athletes were going to other sports. Now, there's ex-NHLers who are training these guys, and there's players coming out of St. Louis all the time when that just wasn't a thing 20 years ago. So, there's sort of like especially in the U.S., and you see with the U.S. National Development Program, who just churns out first rounder after first rounder. There's certainly like the talent pool is deepening, I think, worldwide in general, but has it deepened enough? Have we given it enough time to sort of percolate to bring on those 46 new jobs? That's the debatable part. And also from sort of a fan perspective, right now, I bet you if you ask like an average fan across the NHL who isn't in Columbus, name more than 3 Columbus Blue Jackets, I bet you most people would be stumped. And I bring that up because, yeah, sure, if you're in your own market, you know your team pretty well. You know what's going on with your team. That's not that hard. But I think there's a lot of value in knowing the rest of the league. And if you add team after team after team, you start losing that connection to the rest of the league. And you start going, oh, my team's playing Columbus tonight. I don't know anything about this team. Whereas if you go back to the original 6, you knew everyone. When you had 21 teams, you knew most of these players. 30, okay, that was tolerable. 32, it can be difficult sometimes. And then if you grow that even more. So hockey is a regional sport already, and adding more teams might actually make it even more regional, which, again, there's pros and cons to this. Is there more revenue coming in? That's a plus. Are fans disconnecting with the rest of the league? That's a negative.
Someone made a good point in the chat that, the difference between the 750th best player in the world and the 850th best player in the world is basically nil.
Sure.
It's a really fine line between, we see it all the time with guys getting called up from the American League. I mean, your top American leaguers, can they play, fourth line in the National Hockey League? The answer is yes. To me, the question, John, is there enough star power? I mean, and I think that's what we're getting at to put these teams on the map, other than being, workmanlike. It's an NHL franchise. So they're guys that can draw fans, can draw attention to those markets. That, I think, is up for debate.
Yeah, and that's fair. And sort of on the same point or same train of thought, the flip side of saying, oh, the talent pool is going to be diluted, the hockey isn't going to be as good, is that maybe the superstars, the McDavids, the Matthews, maybe they feast on this inferior competition even more. And we start seeing McDavid, challenge for Gretzky's points record. I mean, that's crazy to say, but I'm just throwing something out there where maybe it becomes a little even more high scoring. And like maybe the talent gap from the best player in the league and the worst player ends up actually rising, lifting up these superstars, and they become, global names. They become these star attractions. So again, there's all these different angles into this and different ways to look at it. You can spin it positive or negative pretty much on any topic relating to expansion. But I thought that was an interesting one that someone brought up to me when I did this story, where it's like everyone thinks that bringing in worse players, inferior players, is going to hurt the product, which is possible, but also you might be helping these best players look better. You might be seeing more highlights from Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, etc. So that's interesting too. And the expansion draft would have to be favorable. I think you can't go back to what it used to be for the Predators and the Blue Jackets and the Wild. You have to give them very favorable conditions. One, because they're paying $1 billion, and two, because you want these teams to survive and really thrive like Vegas and Seattle have so far.
No doubt about it. You taking in the All-Star festivities in the weekend?
I am, yeah. So I'm based in Hamilton, so not far from Toronto. So I'll be heading there Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, whatever about the 3-on-3 games. I am looking forward to this new skills competition. I think it's going to be, I think it'll be very well received, and it should be a lot of fun, especially when you look at the names that are up there. John, have a great weekend. Enjoy. And maybe we'll touch base in the next little bits, check about the All-Star experience, and get back to the games on this push to the playoffs in both the East and the West.
Absolutely. As usual, thanks for having me on, guys. Cheers.
Good stuff. There's John Matisz at thescore.com. Check out all of his work covering the National Hockey League. We're going to get Brandon Rewucki in focusing a little bit more on the Jets, although I am looking forward to seeing what he has to say about that skills competition. We can get in on that a little bit more. Of course, we spent a lot of time talking Bombers right off the bat with the news of Chris Streveler's signing. Of course, Chris Streveler will be playing at Princess Auto Stadium, as Princess Auto is the now title sponsor of the home of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a huge supporter of all of our local sports teams, as well as Winnipeg Sports Talk. And of course, Princess Auto is the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West locations, or check them out online and shop 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace. We're into the deep freeze of the winter. And Wallace & Wallace right now are busy helping Winnipeggers and Manitobans make sure their garage door is getting up and down as possible. Listen, the winter, as nice as it is right now, this is when the most stress goes on your garage door. And Wallace & Wallace can help you get it up and down with, of course, the best in maintenance and service. The right time to prevent downtime this winter is now. So give them a call for your inspection and maintenance service. Call today for residential and commercial overhead door sales and service. There's only one name or two you need to know. Wallace & Wallace, the fencing and overhead door experts in Winnipeg since 1946. And got to shout out our friends at F Apparel. Guys, we're now into the new year. Spring is around the corner. Wedding season will be here before you know it. How's your menswear looking? If you're a guy that looks into the closet realizing you need to step it up, the best place you can do it at the best price is F Apparel at 190 Smith Street downtown, with custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married this year or in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the staff at F Apparel about a 15% discount when the fellas go down together to get their suits for the big day from F Apparel. Make an appointment or find out more online at that's EPHapparel.com. And they are located at 190 Smith Street downtown. All right, let's get Rewucki in here. Just getting ready for a busy few days on the home front. Moving. It's nothing like it, eh, buddy? How excited are you for the next little bit?
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. Yeah, give me more. Give me more. No, I think this is, we've officially realized that this is the first and the last move for the Rewucki clan. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to push this behind us here. But a surprisingly big sports day today, man. Like with the Strevy news and the All-Star coming up, Chelsea, Liverpool, which I'm sure all your listeners are absolutely jacked up and geared for in a couple minutes. I got the blue kid ready to go in the bat. So this is a pretty big day for me. I'm putting the moving down on like fourth on the pecking order right now.
Well, I can tell you, I'm sure your wife will love that. I'm sure listen, people fired up about Streveler coming back. I mean, a great bit of news. Still some uncertainty as to some of the other players from last year's Bomber team that may or may not be back. But, listen, with the uncertainty of Brady Oliveira, whoever is playing running back, that running game gets a big, big boost with Chris Streveler. And we can already just start moving the chains on 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 1 right now, because you know that Streveler is going to get there. But listen, I want to ask you about, we'll talk Jets in just a quick second. I'm really excited about the skills competition. And I'm normally, like in the past, it's been whatever, it's fun. Oh, who's going to be the fastest skater? Who's even in it? Or any of the guys going to participate? But I mean, like the names that we've got, they're playing for $1 million. Each player is going to go in 4 of the first 6 events. Then the final 8 move on to a one-on-one shootout competition. And then the final 6 in on a double points obstacle course round, I guess, to make it happen. But Pasternak, McKinnon, Makar, Draisaitl, McDavid, Barzal, Kucherov, Matthews, Nylander, Quinn Hughes, and I think JT Miller. I mean, credit to the league for getting the Stars to be in on this. And I'm really hoping that this is the start of a format that can carry on for a long time. And if it works and they use it well, we could be talking about years and years in advance doing the same format to see who was winning the skills competition. I think it'll carry a hell of a lot more cachet than anything that's happened on All-Star Weekend in the last decade.
Yeah, I think this might be in terms of creative and marketing, I think it might be the best thing the NHL has done since the initial Winter Classic. Like, I think it's an absolute grand slam. I don't know how any hockey fan honestly can't be excited. It might be a little bumpy in terms of execution. Like, I just hope that if it doesn't go completely flawlessly, that they scrap the whole project, because it might be one of those things that you might need to kind of workshop it for a year or two. But this is everything that the NHL should be doing at all times, which is exclusively marketing their stars and giving them an opportunity to shine on the brightest stage possible. And so I think they've absolutely nailed it. I love it. I hope it goes well. I think there might be a few bumps or two, but I just don't get how any hockey fan isn't tuning in to see how things go out. And I think, with the money prize that's being put down on it, you're not going to get all-star level effort. The hope here is that, the players kind of understand, and maybe the league nudges them that, look, guys, we need everything from you here. And then we're asking for a bit of a favor, and there's a pretty juicy reward for it if it ends up going well for you tonight. So I'm really, really excited. I hope they also adopt my all-star game format idea, but this is an excellent first step in improving the actual on-ice all-star festivities.
What refresh us? What is your idea to make the all-star game better?
So, and I'm glad you asked. I kind of led you into asking.
You did. I'm intrigued. I'm always here for interesting ideas for that sort of thing.
So, and to me, like, the main issue with all-star games in any sport is realistically just the lack of effort put out there. And I totally understand players not wanting to go 110%. So it's how can you manufacture some level of, at the very least, regular season intensity as opposed to playoff intensity, which is probably unrealistic. And for me, the way to do that is let's shorten the playing surface and eliminate the number of players that are out there. So my dream NHL All-Star format, I think it will work better in basketball, honestly, Huss, than hockey. But my dream NHL All-Star format is essentially a March Madness style bracket. And you have teams of two. And you go up against another team of two. It's one half of the ice. First goal, sudden death wins. You move on to the tournament, lose, see you later. And we keep doing this until we get to the final matchup. But I'm open to ideas. I'm open to workshopping it. But we're essentially doing like NHL Mortal Kombat. And I think that's going to be the best way to, and I think you'll get buy-in from the players on this because you're making it really competitive. And it's something new and different. And I don't know. You can't tell me that if the final wasn't McKinnon-McDavid versus Crosby-Makar, that even old man Crosby wouldn't be out there busting his ass trying to get the W. You know what I mean? Like, I think.
Hey, how about this? Every team sends their two guys in their goalie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about March Madness. There's 64 teams. You just start in the round of 32. And it goes over, say, 3 days.
Interesting. I like that. My other potential idea, just because they've done this before, is you can have, and depending on the teams and players and stuff like that, is you could also have, like, say 16 captains, and they pick who they want to go with. And that's how you create your all-star teams that way. Like, if you wanted to keep it just all-stars, you could do it that way. But I'd be down too with the 32 teams like going toe to toe. That's like NHL hits back in the day where you just have your best three in the goalie.
I mean, as it is right now, every team needs to be represented. I'd far rather roll with your concept of it, where the all-stars or the best players from each team go together, and you inevitably get the best players probably moving on, playing for something. Well, it is. Let's think about that. We're watching the 3-on-3 go through the motions for the signature event of it. Although, as I said, the skills competition with these 12 stars all participating in multiple events with a significant prize, I think is going to be great. Brandon, we're just over a month from the trade deadline, and we've talked a lot about the Jets' need for a second-line center, which was, as the goals have dried up with Mark Scheifele on the shelf, eminently obvious. We've talked about, the names that have been kicked around, Elias Lindholm, kind of a step down, Monahan, Adam Henrique. Are there some other guys out there that haven't been named that are intriguing to you that, and again, let's face it, Chevy's pulled off a couple wild ones in the past, Paul Stastny in particular. This is sports talk. We can have crazy ideas. Hell, Hamilton started pitching Sidney Crosby a month ago, which is still an unbelievable idea if it ever got to any semblance of reality. But let's go down that road. Guys that can play center, guys that could fit in the top six. Is there a name or two that intrigues you that might not be so ridiculous that it's at least worth discussing?
I love it. Hammer's hitting the dispensary. I love it. I don't know if I'd go that far. There were a couple names that did intrigue me. My initial dream one was Brock Nelson, but that was back when the Isles were scuffling and before Patty Wall was brought back into the fold. So that pretty much dashed that one almost immediately. But one name that I like, and I think also has the potential to be available, a team in that bubble spot just outside the playoff picture right now that you could buy low on, is Yanni Gourde out in Seattle. And I wonder if the fit here wouldn't be pretty damn excellent as well. To me, that's almost, you're getting like a supercharged Vladdy Nemesnikov. They kind of play similar styles. Obviously, Gourde, look, everybody knows what Gourde did. He was kind of the unsung hero for the Lightning's back-to-back cup runs. He was the engine on that third line. That was one of the better third lines we've seen on a cup-winning team in years and years and years. And he checks off a lot of the boxes too. He's not super big, but does everything else for you. He's been there. He's won everything.
He can skate.
Face-offs. He can skate like the wind. He kills penalties as well. Got a little more offensive pop than Nemesnikov does. And I could see him fitting really, really well with the Nicky Ehlers beside him. So that's one of the guys. I'll see if I can pull up my list too quickly because there was somebody else that I liked. But
yeah, you pull that up in a minute. I'll just add on Gourde as I pull up Cap Friendly. 32 right now. He's got one more year on the deal. And I've sort of been a proponent of more rentals this year for the Jets because of the way that their roster is set up with everybody signed for next year, with the exception of Cole Perfetti, who will be an RFA and, will presumably get whether it's a shorter or a long-term deal done with the Jets. If you're starting to bring guys on with significant cap hits that you can maybe handle this year, it does complicate things for the summer. And that's why a Lindholm does make sense. That's why a guy like Tanev coming in. It doesn't complicate things. It doesn't block your younger players because I think the Jets, with where they're at, are going to need a couple guys on ELCs. A McGroarty, potentially a Lambert, and Elias Salmonson. But I think that's manageable. And only having the one more year on the deal, I think there's enough that an NHL general manager should be able to figure out a way to make that work if the deal makes sense for the present tense.
Yeah, and Gourde's contract isn't terrible either. I think he's got one more year after this.
Yeah, one more at 5.16.
That's kind of the sweet spot, in my opinion, to go after guys at the deadline. And obviously the Jets wouldn't even need Seattle to retain, which is massive for any team. But I think the Kraken would like that especially. He doesn't get a ton of minutes out there. Not that they don't underappreciate him or anything, but it's not like they're moving a Shane Wright or a Matty Beignet, like a guy that's playing 19 minutes a night for them. I feel like that one could be the classic Chevy under the radar move. The other guy that I was thinking about that I've started to see people mention as well, so it's not necessarily a totally new name, but circling around the trash heap that is Columbus, you wonder what the price would look like on a guy like Boone Jenner.
Oh, we've talked about him for sure.
Yeah.
Couple more years. He's like 3.5. Like he's got great deal, which would probably cost you a little bit more to get a player like that. And I believe he's a couple years younger. I think he's 30 years old. Like, that's a guy that would come in and be a big part of your team. He is the captain there. But, I mean, I think everything's on the table with Columbus right now.
And, like, you wonder, I don't think they'll do it, but, I mean, imagine if Jarmo gets canned.
Well, or do they trust Jarmo to make that trade?
Fair, exactly, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's to me, that's why it's a little bit more of a pipe dream, because you're dealing your captain. I mean, he's kind of like Mr. Blue Jacket right now. He's been there for over a decade at this point. It might be a little bit unrealistic, but again, that's one of your under the radar, nobody's talking about him Chevy type moves. And I wonder, like, if you'd rather Boone Jenner or Yanni Gourde, like, who would be the preferred candidate there? I'm a big Gourde fan. I don't know. I like him a lot. I wonder what the cost would be with Seattle too. Like, I think it would be less than Boone Jenner as well. And you're not locked in. Not that Jenner's contract is onerous or anything, right? But, like, it's only an extra year commitment. You get him for 2 playoff runs, and then at that point, you probably hope that maybe an internal solution pops up at second line center.
Well, and just to your point, to add on to that, as we pull up Sebas, Boone Jenner has 2 years left at 3.75. He's 30 years old right now, so he's a couple years younger as well. One thing that certainly, I mean, if this is important to you, playoff experience, obviously Gourde has that, got the rings, been with those incredible Tampa teams, so he certainly does bring that. But I actually also think that there's a level, when we're talking about a Jenner or an Adam Henrique, for instance, of guys that have been on these garbage teams for a long time that haven't had a chance to play on good teams that are even more highly motivated to go in to make an impact and to make the most of that opportunity that they really haven't had before.
Exactly. And Hampus Lindholm's a great example of that, Huss, where a lot of people were clowning on Boston when they made the deal. Like, this guy's
and
done.
signed him.
And signed him too. Like, what are we doing here? And then he ends up, like, what was he, top 10 Norris voting last year? Right? Like, there is something to be said to, hey, we'll give you the old postseason jolt and watch a guy explode on a new team thing. Yeah, I totally buy that. It kind of makes me wonder too, this would be so much more complicated though. But again, I saw someone just kind of float out there, I wonder what Tomas Hertl's future is like in San Jose, with him knowing that there's no hope of a postseason berth anytime soon. That's kind of the double whammy, Huss. He's been to a cup final, but you're also getting a guy that's been on an awful team for a few years. So there'd be a big jolt of energy for him in kind of escaping that situation. So I don't know if that's going to work or not.
Hertl right now would be an awesome addition. The fact of the matter is he's signed at over $8 million until 2030. And, once you add in, like, the Jets have that contract already with Mark Scheifele. Like, even if you're able to do that, do you want 2 players on that sort of same career path that you'll be paying big money for the back 9 of their career? I think it makes sense for one, especially a player like Scheifele with where he's at and his level of importance. But listen, if I'm Cheveldayoff, I'm looking at some of the other options. Like, as I say, and sometimes they'll say, hey, you got a window, you got to make the move right now. But taking on an $8+ million contract for a guy that's going to run till he's 37 is significant, and it is a big, big risk to take.
That's the scared money don't make no money type of trade, right? Where you're like, there's a lot of risk coming in, but it's like, banners don't fly until just 2030. They'll be up in the rafters forever. So that's the risk reward that you have to weigh, right? Like, obviously, I mean, a rental, there's no long-term commitment. A guy like Gourde is maybe the sweet spot there, but I mean, Hertl's by far the biggest impact guy you could add that's seemingly available, right? So I don't know if I would give that the stamp of approval, Hus, but I'd think about it. I'd be like, okay, Mike Greer, like, what are we talking here? Can we retain a little bit as well? Like, what are our options on that? I would like to hear my options out on a potential Hertl deal at least.
Hey, listen, he certainly would be a major impact player, and that would be a guy that I don't think a lot of people have been talking about or thinking, but probably because of the contract as much as anything. I can guarantee you if he had an expiring deal or 1 year left, being out there on San Jose, his name would be at the top of pretty much every list. Brandon Rewucki's with us. B, got to ask you this, and this is not a great topic to get to, but you're very tied in with the Philadelphia Flyers. I know you're, paying close attention to like where are the fans at right now with what's happened with Carter Hart, and I mean, what does this mean? I mean, listen, we've talked a lot about the main concern is the victims. These guys are screwed probably for the next couple of years minimum, whether they can get a conviction or not. I think what we've learned about the incident from the investigations is going to make these guys incredibly radioactive to any teams. But like in Philly, with that market of a player that was thought to be a cornerstone of the franchise, now that it's public and he is one of the 5 that is going to be going to court probably in 2026, where's the fan base at, and where does the organization go with the uncertainty, or maybe the certainty that he's just done as a Flyer?
Well, I think that's kind of what everybody's wondering / almost confirming is like, do we see Carter Hart play his last game as a Flyer? It's a very valid question. I don't know where it goes, right? Because like you said, I mean, if a trial is potentially 2 years away, I don't know what the discipline would be like, right? Like how, there's so many question marks. It does, to me at least, kind of feel like the end of Hart's chapter in Philly. A lot of people are excited about Sam Ersson before this all came down, and now the reins are kind of being handed to him. But it's just, he was seen as a franchise cornerstone, Huss, but he was we all know Philly's goaltending graveyard that it's been since Ascend. I mean, Hextall and Pelle Lindbergh briefly, right? But like since Bernie Perron, essentially, like he was like kind of seen as the savior for the franchise, and for it to potentially end like this it's something nobody could have possibly seen coming. So like I don't know, there's an element of shock really that this is probably how it ends for him. It's tough to say where it goes from here, because I mean, we know things can change pretty quickly in terms of like the judicial system and courts and all that sort of stuff, but it's pretty tough to envision him wearing the orange and black again. Where his career goes after that, not so sure.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, and again, not to be cynical here, but we've seen this sort of thing happen before in multiple pro sports. Hart is by far the best player of these 5. I mean, if you had to bet on some team kind of holding their nose and at some point taking a chance on a guy, he would be the guy. But I just think about such a massive story this is in hockey. I mean, this isn't something that happened like unrelated to hockey. I mean, it is a hockey story. It is the quote unquote hockey culture that continues to, hopefully change. But I mean, this was 2018, and listen, if anything, if any of these guys are playing, I'd be willing to put a pretty large wager it's in the KHL at some point. And I don't even know what it means for them, like for the next couple of years, whether they'll be able to do that while they're waiting to proclaim their innocence in a court of law. The other part of it is that they're all RFAs. And I would presume there'll probably be some, league mandate that these guys are just on the commissioner's list or whatever. Like right now, they're going to get paid for the rest of this year. But at the end of those years, they're not getting more contracts. Like no one's signing these guys next year. I would have a feeling that maybe those teams would retain their rights beyond the normal period of time. But in a way, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I think if you read the tea leaf from what Philadelphia has been saying going forward, that they realize that Ersson's their guy right now. Carter Hart's probably not coming back. And if that's the case, Calgary will be working the same way. New Jersey will be working the same way with 2 players on that list and going forth. But, I mean, listen, sometimes you get into the minutia of what this means for teams, but they loved Hart there, and he was like a big part. And I mean, there is that fan base has really taken a hit, and it's sort of been a much quieter one. Usually Philly fans are loud and boisterous and us against the world. But, just from what I've been paying attention to, this is something that, while there were whispers and rumors, people knew he was on that team. There was a very strange bit from his lawyer a year ago. I guess while everything's normal, people can sort of put that away. But now that this is out there, it sort of seems like, I think for all of those guys, they're probably going to be, even if, and we've heard before that, the possibility of a conviction is going to be very difficult in this case. But I really do wonder, because of such a public sport, I mean, this isn't just going and getting a random anonymous job somewhere. There's a lot that goes with that player, and especially a team like Philly that has had, some ups and downs in that area beforehand. I mean, at some point they kind of go off, but I do wonder whether it's just an NHL league-wide that this is such a dark story for hockey, regardless of, if these guys are able to get off. Once everything is public and once we learn officially what's happened in addition to what's been reported, it's going to be pretty tough for these guys to resume their careers.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And it just, I guess it depends how quick that process takes place. But I think even too, just like from a Philly perspective, where year one of your announced rebuild, and you want to stay away from any kind of drama, controversy, negativity, all that, even if it did get, settled or whatever it is, I just don't really see a way that he's welcome back with the team. So again, yeah, just wild that this is how it ends there. But I think if the Flyers are going to go that route with a guy like Carter Hart, I would imagine the other teams go the route with those players as well. And
no doubt about it. And I mean, just quickly on Philly, it seems to have completely derailed their season as well. They've lost 5 in a row since that has happened. And I think they're still positive on Urson, and the break's probably coming at a good time for them right now. But they were really taking on water there at the end, and I can understand it.
Yeah, well, it was similar to the Jets, I think, too. Like they might be the two teams in biggest need of that break, because both were dealing with injuries and scheduling. The schedule was just insane. You kind of wonder, is the NHL bye week worth it if you're going to cram so many games in there that guys are getting hurt all over the place and the product isn't very good? Like that, it's a different discussion there. But yeah, you're just getting hit with everything all at once if you're Philadelphia. And it's fair to wonder if it's like, okay, the clock hit midnight here and it's back to being a pumpkin with Philadelphia. But their start was just kind of like found money this year, right? Like there was no intention of competing for a playoff spot, right? If it happened, it happened. Great. If anything, it in a weird way, it might be the best possible thing long term for the team, where it's like, okay, whatever they were thinking before that, it's like a splash of reality. Let's make sure we get some assets for guys that might be heading to free agency, whatever it might be. And the dose of reality is we're nowhere near being where we need to be, and so it's no doubt seller time, as opposed to before where there might have been a little bit of debate.
for a team in the Flyers position. You wouldn't want to add somebody or not trade a few guys, make a big run, and then finish just short and be picking 16th or 15th in the draft. Not a great spot to be in. Listen, I'll let you get back to the footy and the boxes. Good luck over the next few days, buddy. We'll talk to you next week when we're back at it.
Sounds good. Have a good one, guys. We'll talk soon.
There's Brandon Rewucki. Subscribe to Skates and Plates wherever you get your favorite podcasts for the latest on the Jets and more from Brandon and Tyson Rewucki. All right. This is going to be fun. Hooking up with I'm excited for baseball season. Hooking up with the new manager of the Winnipeg Goldeyes. And I'll tell you what, we've been enjoying Little Brown Jug at the arena this year, now at the stadium as well. But I will say this, of all our sports venues, there's nowhere that a generic lager or a 1919 tastes better than the ballpark. And the Goldeyes are coming back next season with a new manager. We'll talk to him in a minute. But of course, at all venues now, Little Brown Jug's an official partner with all the teams. When we're back at the rink next week for the Penguins game, you can check out Craft Beer Corner upstairs in 310, downstairs in 126, and get both Little Brown Jug flagship brands, 1919 and Generic Lager. And right now, at your favorite local beer store, Generic Lager on sale, $19.99 for 8 packs right now. Pick it up, my personal favorite. Great, light, refreshing. Closest thing, if you're a domestic beer drinker, that you'll find in the craft type, and it's 100% local from our friends at Little Brown Jug. Find out more online at littlebrownjug.ca about everything they've got going on, not to mention local delivery options as well. And hey, a big shout out to our friends at Royal Sports as well. Super Bowl coming up a week Sunday. I know there'll be a run on everything remaining, Niners and Chiefs, in time for the big game. And whoever wins, you know who I'm pulling for, Super Bowl championship gear shortly thereafterwards at Royal Sports, because they are the #1 sports superstore in town. Whether you're looking for Jets, Bombers, NFL, Raptors, and NBA, Major League Baseball with the season just around the corner, they've got it all for you there. The best hockey section in town, skates to hit the ODR or the river as well, some lesser expensive, more casual or beginner skates, snowboards, boots, bindings, it's all there at Royal Sports. Pop down and see them, 750 Pembina Highway, and follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina. We're going to check in with our friends at Sport Manitoba in a few minutes, but right now, let's welcome in Logan Watkins, new manager of the Fish on WST. Logan, congratulations on coming to the Peg and being the new skipper of the Fish. How are you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm excited to get there. I'm doing really well. It's been a fun off season trying to kind of get this roster kind of rebuilt and hopefully give the fans a team they're excited about watching.
You know, it's going to be a real exciting. I mean, fans are already excited. I mean, a big addition to the ballpark with the brand new scoreboard, which I think is going to just completely revolutionize the game day experience there, and some great additions to the ballpark. But again, it's about the squad. It was a down year for the Goldeyes, and a great new beginning with you as the manager. You're a young man, just 34 years old. I think people seeing you for the first time would be like, geez, that's young for a manager. But you've basically been in baseball your entire life, and it seems like you didn't take very much time moving on from an extended minor league and major league career, getting right into a managerial role.
Yeah, I guess I am pretty young. I don't feel young. Still kind of wake up with a sore back. That might be from playing baseball. I still get carded sometimes when I buy some beer somewhere or something. So that's I guess somewhat of a compliment. But yeah, as far as baseball goes, I've been in pro ball since I was 18 years old. So I guess that is 16 years now, 17 years, something like that. So both as a player and now a coach. So yeah, I guess you can say I've been around a little bit. I've started to realize, especially like trying to find players for this team, how important my experience is, just as far as knowing other coaches and knowing other players somewhere. So if you find a player, you can kind of look at where they've been and who they've played with, and you can kind of form connections seeing their former teammates and guys that I know. And so that's how we found quite a few guys, just kind of going through other coaches and other players. And it's starting to pay off slowly but surely. This team's starting to get put together.
You know, I would imagine, you know, especially, and, you know, people talk about today's athletes, and I'm sure they've been always saying that, you know, as people change over decades and generations. But I would imagine there's a unique opportunity for you being a younger manager, one that, you know, finished playing not too long ago, to connect with younger players, but also, you know, being involved with, you know, some greats through your playing career with a bit of an old school background, and give, you know, a combination of the two, which will hopefully be great, you know, for the club.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably one of those people that kind of went through the era of old school baseball into the analytics world. Like, I came up with the Cubs organization, and I think maybe my 6th year there, Theo Epstein took over as the general manager and brought a completely different approach that Boston was using, that's more analytic based and, you know, stuff like that. So then I got to play a few years in that kind of mindset of the organization transitioning to that mindset. So I've kind of seen both. And then I think I more so just value just the relationships you build with people. And I think that that goes a long ways as far as when you manage, 25 men in a clubhouse, feeling like, you have a relationship with each one individually, or you've built some sort of respect for each other. I think that is ultimately how, a clubhouse performs its best, and the vibe is good and everyone wants to come to work every day. And I think those teams that have that, I think, are the ones that end up being pretty successful.
It's like any job. I mean, if you're having fun going to work, it makes that day better. But at the end of the day, in professional sports, winning is what makes it fun, and you got to find that right mix to get the wins. How would you describe your baseball philosophy, if you will?
I think my approach when it comes to at least managing this team, it's more so get your work done right now. So I don't take days off from this. I'm trying to find the right players. I mean, there's plenty of guys that are willing to sign to play with Winnipeg, but the hard part is kind of filtering through and finding the guys that make sense for us and that, have a good blend of experience, have a good, blend of still hungry to play the game and not maybe on their last year with one foot out the door. Because, it's independent ball is a lot of fun, but it can be a grind too, because our road trips from Winnipeg aren't the easiest all the time. So if you have a guy that's only kind of halfway committed, it can be easy for that kind of guy to check out on you. So kind of just, like I said, kind of filtering through all the players that have either I've come across or have reached out to us and finding those right guys. And then at the end of the day, once the season starts, just get out of their way and let them play. I'm not someone that tries to overmanage a game. I feel like a lot of these guys are here because I wanted them to be here, and I know what kind of players they are, and I want them to just be free to be able to be those players. So I would say, as far as baseball goes, just kind of being hands off once the season starts and more aggressive approach right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because during the season we'll be talking about the ins and outs of the day-to-day grind and the games, but this part of the calendar probably is as important as the season when you're putting this team together. What's that been like for you?
It's really fun. So this is probably the part of the job I love the most is searching for players, and then the most humbling part of it is you find a player you get really excited about and you reach out to them and they say, yeah, man, sorry, I'm not interested in independent baseball. And so then, oh man, that's a little deflating, and back to, okay, who's next? But kind of that thrill of the hunt is what is a lot of fun for me, and kind of roster construction. And then obviously you find a player that wants to play for you, and then it's managing your salary cap and negotiating salary with them. So there's a lot that goes into building the rosters. I mean, we could, if there was no salary cap restriction, we could get a bunch of, good veteran experienced players on a team. But I mean, everyone knows, especially in this league, there's a rookie requirement. You have to have a certain number of rookies on your team, and then you can only have a certain number of veterans on your team. So kind of filling in that gap in between is difficult, but it's a lot of fun. And, I spend more time on Baseball Reference than, any other site. I'm constantly, someone tells me, hey, I got a pitcher for you. What's his name? I'll look him up and I'll have a pretty good idea of what he is and how he plays pretty quick. So that's been a good modern luxury for me. But and then our coaching staff does a pretty good job as far as, they know people as well. So if we hear a name, hey, do you know this and this? He played in the Dodgers organization. Yeah, I know someone over there. I can ask about him. So it's a collaborative effort, and we're doing our best to make sure we have a good team by the time the opening day comes.
You've been involved in the league for a few years as a player and then a coach. How would you describe where the league is at right now? Because it certainly seems like, on a year-by-year basis, the talent level, even of the rookies, is getting better.
Yeah, I think you find it's kind of a fallout from affiliated baseball. So after COVID, there's fewer teams in affiliated baseball, so there's less jobs. So those guys that typically occupy those jobs need a place to play, and they're kind of finding their way to independent baseball. At the same time, Mexico this year, who everyone knows pays more than what we do in independent baseball, but everyone knows that that's the place to go if you want to make money. So I think you're going to find that we're getting a lot of probably better younger guys kind of filter into our league, but some of the older guys that have kind of been staples in our league and been here for 2 or 3 years and kind of know that, my window to get back to the big leagues is pretty much shut. They're probably going to find their way moving down to Mexico to make a little bit more money before they decide to hang them up. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how roster construction gets done throughout the league this year. But in terms of the last few years, I think the league has been as competitive as it's ever been. There wasn't, even Winnipeg last year being towards the bottom of the standings, I know we played them. I think we maybe split with them when we came to Winnipeg, but that's still not just we show up in Winnipeg and we win every game of that series. It's every game is a fight, and I think that's why you saw most teams' records last year kind of right around 500. Nobody really ran away and nobody really fell off.
New Goldeyes manager Logan Watkins with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. You mentioned coming here before. You spent 3 years in Cleburne as the manager. You played here as a Wichita wingnut. What do you remember about Winnipeg, and how did that maybe influence you being interested in the job? And tell us about getting it.
Actually, I had a funny experience in Winnipeg. And just as a player, and nobody would remember this but me, but I remember we beat the Goldeyes when I was with Wichita. It must have been like 15-1, and I hit leadoff that year, and I think I was like 0 for 6, and everybody else in the dugout's just having a hell of a time. Where everyone's scoring runs, hitting home runs, getting hits, and I wasn't a part of the party, but we won the game, so I was happy. But the next day I came back and was like 5 for 6, so I evened it out, but I do remember kind of riding that roller coaster a little bit, and that was in Winnipeg. But as far as an opposing manager, I love coming to Winnipeg. Obviously, being down in Cleburne, I'm coming from Texas, so that's a good 20-plus hour bus trip. So that part wasn't something I was looking forward to. But finally getting to Winnipeg, the team hotel, the downtown Radisson's awesome. Kind of walking to the park when the weather's nice enough is great. There's a lot of good restaurants and everything on the way there and on the way back if you want to stop in to get something to eat. And then the fan experience has always been great. I don't think I've been to Winnipeg or been there for a game where the stadium wasn't pretty full and the fans were really engaged in the game. So, and then obviously a beautiful stadium. Backdrop is awesome. It's really, if you're going to play independent baseball, it should be one of the premier locations you're looking to play at.
Yeah, we've certainly heard that, from players and people that have been here, as well as visitors, how much they enjoy the trip to Winnipeg. And I'm sure that is a positive when it comes to recruiting players. Logan, I have to ask you about, cracking into the bigs. You mentioned you spent the majority of your time in the Cubs organization, got into 58 games. What was it like getting that call up and getting your first major league game and at bat?
Yeah, I was actually one of those kids that grew up. I played every sport, so it wasn't like my childhood dream to play in the major leagues. But once I got drafted, that became my dream. And it was the best part of it was I got drafted by the Cubs, and I knew that my scout that had pushed to get me drafted. I think I remember him saying like, "Yeah, we're rolling the dice on you." And I got paid a decent amount of money to come out of high school. But I don't think maybe everybody was thinking I was going to be in the big league. So to finally get there, especially with that organization, and kind of prove him right and maybe a few people wrong, meant a lot to me. And that's probably what motivated me to, just push every day to try to get there. And then, I got called up on a Saturday night or Saturday evening in Tacoma, Washington, flew to Chicago, and played in a Sunday day game at Wrigley Field for my debut. So I think when you write it up, it doesn't get much better than that.
How, now that you're a manager and, drafted coming out of high school, making that long climb, cracking a major league roster, playing there for a couple years, but then also playing in independent baseball and now managing for a few years, how has all of that helped you to hopefully move forward with a long, successful career as a manager, beginning, with this season in particular, right here when your first year with Winnipeg?
Yeah, I think my life experience has been has taught me a lot, and I think that's what kind of lets me to relate to other players, because a lot of times guys find themselves in independent baseball because maybe they had one bad year that they got released, and it just, they kind of dug a hole they couldn't get out of, or they got hurt, which I did in 2015. I tore my Achilles and missed the whole year. Went back to AAA in 2016. So, which is the year the Cubs won the World Series. So I just missed the World Series with the Cubs, which is kind of hard to wrap my mind around sometimes, just barely missing that. But my life experiences, I feel like, have kind of prepared me and led me to where I am. And I'm fortunate to be here at a young age. Obviously, like we mentioned, 34 years old. I think I'm the youngest manager in the league by quite a bit. But again, I've been my professional baseball experience, regardless of what my age is, my professional baseball experience can't be, overlooked. I've been around, I played with the Chris Bryants and the Javi Baez's of the world. I've been around great players. I've seen what greatness looks like. I've seen what, guys that have unbelievable work ethics, what that can lead into. Just kind of, I've been around it and I've seen it all. I've been around great coaches. So I bring a lot, I feel like, as far as being able to help guys, at least, obviously the young guys that come play independent baseball are super excited to be there, and they're hoping they get a chance maybe to get to affiliated baseball. And then there's those guys that are coming from affiliated baseball that maybe feel a little dejected because they feel like they're going in the wrong direction. And I've been there too. So it's just kind of relating to both those guys and being able to help them get to where they want to get to.
Logan, tell us about the connection with Winnipeg, presumably with Andrew and Sam, and how it all came together that you got the offer, and your mindset in saying, yeah, I want to be the manager here in Winnipeg with the Goldeyes.
Yeah, so being with Cleburne the last 3 years, the owner that was with Cleburne sold the team to new ownership, and the new ownership obviously wanted to bring in their own people, their own coaching staff, front office guys. So it kind of left me looking for a job. And the previous owner with Cleburne, I think maybe thought that they were going to keep me around in Cleburne. I think he was disappointed to hear that they didn't retain me. And so he knew maybe a few teams in our league that were going to be possibly looking for managers. And so he made the call for me. Sam called me, and I guess you would say the rest is history. I had a couple phone calls with Sam. I think he understood that, the situation in Cleburne maybe left me with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because we'd just been to the playoffs 3 years in a row. And I felt like, I was building kind of a younger team that I was going to have come back. And I think maybe he could tell that fire was kind of lit in me, and that maybe that's what he was looking for to bring to Winnipeg.
Well, I have a feeling he was, considering, it was a down year for the Goldeyes based on their standards. This team has been competitive year in and year out after the long run of Rick Forney, and looking forward to starting a new Goldeyes chapter with you as the skipper going forward. How much more prepared do you think you are as a manager, knowing now what you probably didn't know 3 years ago, having had the experience in the league and the success that you had with the Railroaders?
Yeah, I've learned a lot these last 3 years. The biggest thing for me when I took over was managing a pitching staff, because being a position player, as a player, that was never anything I kind of really even paid attention to. But once I kind of got the hang of that, but I feel like I'm pretty good at delegating responsibilities to my assistant coaches and trusting that, we hired them to do their job, let them do their job. And if they're not doing their job, that's fairly easy for me to see, and then we can address that. But, I very, very rarely will you see me down the line working with the pitcher on his curveball. I'll let my pitching coach do that. And then hitting wise, I think we have a really good hitting coach this year in Adam Donaghy, who's going to do a great job. And that's obviously where I guess you would say my expertise probably would be. But again, there's a fine line of jumping in there and trying to correct your hitting coach's work. I want him to feel like he's doing his job with every player we have. And then when I'm needed, I'll be there. My job is to make this roster as strong as it possibly can. Don't take days off from finding players, like even during the season, because guys get injured, guys get picked up, guys go to Mexico all the time. And if you've completely cut off communication with some good players that might be available, then all of a sudden you're scrambling and you're picking up guys that you don't really want to have on your team, but there's nobody else. So I think that's kind of what I've learned more is just kind of always be prepared for the worst when it comes to like your roster construction, and then keeping the clubhouse happy, because that's ultimately how good teams win, is when the vibes are good.
New Goldeyes manager Logan Watkins with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. So when are we going to see you up here in the Peg? It's gorgeous outside right now, which not usually the case in late January.
Yeah, I got to get out there. Obviously I've been there. My wife wants to come out and see where I'm going to be living. She's going to come visit a few times this year, I'm sure. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, so travel's not always the easiest. Yeah. We'll probably get up there in the next month or two, I can show her everything, and I'll probably bring up some luggage and stuff that I'll probably leave there just to be waiting for me when we get there for the season. But I'm excited. I really feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. I feel like we've left no stone unturned as far as finding players, and slowly but surely it's starting to piece together to what we want it to look like. And I am extremely motivated to, not only for myself to win this year, but I know the fans and the organization in Winnipeg, last year has got them maybe as motivated as they've ever been to get back to where they know they should be. And that's, competing for a championship.
No, it's a really exciting hire and an exciting new chapter of Goldeyes baseball. And in addition, with everything that's happened at the ballpark over the offseason, cannot wait to get out there and see you and the fellas do their thing when the season begins. Again, go to goldeyes.com for more information on the upcoming season. Obviously, the new scoreboard, ticket packages, the new patio, all there. But we will look forward to talking to you again, I'm sure multiple times throughout the season, Logan, and welcoming you to Winnipeg and wishing you luck in your new chapter with the Winnipeg Goldeyes. Thanks for doing this, and can't wait to see you in the Peg as we get closer to baseball season.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a shout anytime.
Great stuff with Logan. Cannot wait for Goldeyes season. I'll have to check in with the cash man, Andrew Collier, coming up in the next few weeks to look ahead to the season as well. And obviously, when they start announcing players, we'll get Logan back on to talk about the squad. And hey, speaking of things getting warmer, although it is freaking gorgeous out right now, summer involves baseball, and it will also involve getting out on the water. And I am already fired up to get back to Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge. If you are thinking about a world-class fly-in fishing getaway with friends and family, fishing pals, or maybe as part of a corporate retreat, there is nowhere better than Aitken's. You can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg. And as incredible as the fishing is, the hospitality of the Terrens and the Aitken's team is even better. Go to aikenslake.com to connect with them on availability for the 2024 fishing season. And if you want to find out more, in addition to the website, check out everything they've got going on Instagram and X at Aitken's Lake. And one last night for hockey tonight. We'll get to the lines and the Coolbet lines at the end of the program. But 3 games on the tube tonight. Might be a good time to pop by your local Boston Pizza to get your hockey fix before the league goes dark for the All-Star festivities on the weekend. Not that you really need to have your arm twisted to go to BP to enjoy ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. Make it a BP night. And hey, if you're staying at home, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. Now, I did screw up the dates today, folks. I don't know why. I haven't known what day it has been all week long. I mentioned we were going to be doing our Sport Manitoba segment. That's, in fact, on Thursday. But right now, we've got this is going to be really fun because a great friend of the program, 37 years at the Regina Leader Post, now following the footsteps of our great friend Ed Tate in a similar role with the Riders, but just could not get the writing out of the system. He's got a new book called Brave Face, Wild Tales of Hockey Goaltenders in the Era Before Masks. It's great to welcome in from Regina, Rob Vanstone. And look at this beautiful backdrop you've got there for us, Rob, today. What's up?
Yeah, I figured with this face, I better make sure I counteract that with a nice backdrop. And I love the setting here, well, every day, but especially when I consider that the Winnipeg Jets, my beloved Winnipeg Jets, are and may forever be undefeated at this very facility, having edged the Calgary Flames 2-1 in overtime in the Heritage Classic on October 26th, 2019. Thank you, Ryan. Brian Little for the overtime goal. So this is, and the Jets were the home team that night. So this is welcome to the home of the Winnipeg Jets and the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
It's funny you bring up that Heritage Classic just for a second. Obviously, Brian Little, I mean, an all-time great Jet, a favorite that we'll always remember, with one of the most memorable goals, certainly in regular season history. But you know what's funny from a football side of things? That was such a great weekend with Calgary and Winnipeg fans meeting in the middle in Regina for that game. And I will always remember the night before when we were in town was the Bombers Calgary game, Zach Collaros' first game as a Bomber, the start going into the playoffs. And if you recall, that was that bananas play at the end where he ran around and hit Darvin Adams in the back of the end zone.
Yeah, the back right of the end zone.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a highlight that still gets played. I don't think people remember the fact that that was his first game. And at that point, the acquisition of Collaros at the time was sort of like a little bit of an insurance, and all of a sudden, holy smokes, and of course, magic happened ever since then. So certainly great memories for a lot of Jet fans and even Bomber fans that were there that week. But let's talk hockey right now. And I know you are, as you mentioned, a devoted Winnipeg Jets fan. There's some really neat Jets content in this book, which we'll get to in a minute. But just first off, tell us about writing a book about maskless goalies. It is amazing. I didn't even realize that there were some goalies playing without a mask in pro hockey in my lifetime, but it's actually later than a lot of people think. But tell us how the idea came about and the project.
Well, you even remember it's happened accidentally. Connor Hellebuck got his mask knocked off not too long ago, ended up surrendering a goal maskless. But it has to happen in accidental fashion now, whereas once upon a time it was just commonplace up until the late 1950s for every goalie not to wear a mask. And I started following hockey, sports in general, in the early 70s. And I remember it was hockey night in Canada, and Boston was playing, and they zoomed in on Jerry Cheevers, the first hockey game I'd ever watched. They zoomed in on his Stitches mask. And as a 7-year-old, I was fascinated by his mask with the Stitches painted on. Not long after that, they showed a game with the Minnesota North Stars, and there was Gump Worsley without a mask. And I could not believe that somebody would not wear a mask playing professional hockey. And suddenly I realized, hey, Joe Daly doesn't have a mask. And I just, as a kid, I could not believe that this could happen, especially when there's people like Bobby Hull and Dennis Hull running around, Mickey Redmond blasting shots at these goalies. And so what happened years and years and years later was during the pandemic, I was at the Regina Leader-Post, and there's no sports, and I'm a sports writer. Talk about obsolete. And our editors at the time said, look, if there's ever something you've always wanted to write, if there's a bucket list item that you'd love to do, now's the time. You're a sports writer without sports. Come up with something. So I decided to do kind of a weekend takeout on maskless goalies. And about 2 or 3 interviews into the project, it was like, oh, this is so cool. I wanted to try and kind of turn it into a book. So I contacted the amazing people at Triumph Books in Chicago and pitched it to them, and were great, have been great ever since. And I just went absolutely haywire writing about maskless goalies and scratching this itch that I'd had for more than 50 years at the time. I could babble on forever about it, as you've probably gathered by now.
You mentioned Helly, our guy, 7 more years and hopefully another Vezina and the trophy that he really wants to get, the Stanley Cup. But you mentioned that Hellebuck story in the prologue of the book.
It's actually funny. I had the book written, pretty much done, and then that happened, and I thought, I got to get this in. So I contacted Michelle Bruton at Triumph Books in Chicago and said, Michelle, this is too good. Can I revise the prologue? So it originally didn't begin with that, but just in time, there was that fateful shot against Helly, and I had to squeeze it in. And thank you, Michelle, again for being so accommodating, especially now that I get to talk about it to a Jets audience.
One of the other things, and this is in the forward, but also in a chapter devoted to him. I remember as a young kid, I mean, I really didn't sort of get to understand. Like, I guess I'd heard of the Jets when I was really, really young, but I was too young to appreciate the WHA championships. But as you get older and the Jets are in the NHL, you start learning more about Jets history. You're seeing pictures, and you know about the great Joe Daly. And now people visit him at the card shop over in St. Vital, along with his family. But I had no idea that Joe Daly played as a maskless goaltender. He is one of the featured goaltenders in this. But fill us in a little bit on goalie Joe. And wearing the mask or not wearing the mask, and then as someone like me would remember him from the glory days of the WHA Winnipeg Jets, eventually putting one on.
Yeah, I remember getting a Joe Daly hockey card in 1971 with I think it was they airbrushed a Detroit Red Wings uniform on him because he'd just gone from Buffalo to Detroit, so they had kind of a fake
Red Wings.
And that's long before Photoshop. And he was one of the first goalies that really stood out because Gump Worsley doesn't wear a mask, Joe Daly doesn't wear a mask. And then hard to believe in the early 70s, even though the trajectory as far as maskless goalies was basically they're decreasing, the number of maskless goalies increased because Andy Brown was called up by the Red Wings from the Fort Worth Wings. Suddenly there were 3 maskless goalies in the NHL as opposed to 2. Joe Daly being one of the last holdouts, and he ended up becoming an original Winnipeg Jet. So did a longtime NHL goaltender named Ernie Wakely. And it was actually, Ernie was in his early 30s then. It was actually at Ernie's behest or urging that Joe Daly decided to wear a mask. Joe told me that, Ernie realized he was getting older. He didn't have it in him to play 60 or 70 games. He said, look, I'm going to need a breather. If you're going to be the other guy, I want you to play. I don't want you to get hurt because you're not wearing a mask and get hit in the head. So it was Ernie Wakely, who had been a maskless goalie himself at one point, who said to Joe Daly, wear a mask. One of the funny stories that Joe told me, one of the many, I've got to go to that store next time I'm in Winnipeg, was that he said he'd never lost any teeth. He'd been pretty much unscathed as a maskless goalie. But then he goes back to Weyburn. He played for the Weyburn Red Wings of the old Saskatchewan the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League before ascending to the pros. He went back to Weyburn for like an alumni game or an exhibition game or some kind of fun game and got hit in the mouth and lost some teeth in a fun game, whereas he's facing, Bobby Hull and he still has that perfect smile. Like, what are the odds, right?
We and even to this day, we still talk about how goalies are generally weird. But I mean, back then it just seems like we're flat out psychos. I mean, putting themselves on the line without those masks. A big part of it is the invention of the mask, how it happened. And I mean, all of this, basically comes down to some hard rubber right in the grill that made a lot of guys think otherwise about going out unprotected.
Yeah, and gradually, though, it didn't exactly happen right away. Eddie Johnston, I love talking to Eddie Johnston, and he said, I asked him about, why he didn't wear a mask, and he said, well, I wore number 1, and that was also my IQ. It was like nobody wore helmets back then. Football players didn't have face guards until the late 40s, early 50s. There were leather helmets. Everything evolves, and as the game evolved, the curved sticks arrived. The better stick technology arrived. The boomers started coming. Boom Boom Jeffrey on. Andy Bathgate could really fire the puck. You got Bobby Hull in the late 50s, etc. So as the pucks became more dangerous and the shots became more dangerous, hence the need for masks. But Jacques Plante got plunked in the head by Andy Bathgate, intentionally, as it turned out, on November 1st, 1959 at Madison Square Garden. Jacques had to go to the training room for stitches, refused to re-enter the game without a mask. Eventually, Toe Blake realized, especially in the day before backup goalies, it's either Jacques Plante or the trainer that ends up playing goals. So Jacques went back into net, finished the game. Canadians won, continued to go on what turned out to be a 13-game unbeaten streak. And once it was established that, a goalie could play without a mask. It wasn't going to impede his vision. It wasn't going to make him tougher to see pucks at his feet. I think that old myth started to disappear, but only gradually. You still had goalies like Eddie Jockman and Les Binkley not wearing masks until actually October 1st, 1970. They both wore masks for the first time that night. Glenn Hall wasn't until 1968. And we've talked about, Joe Daly, early 70s. We've talked about Gump Worsley until the 73-74 season. Andy Brown never did, right through 1976. There was a great minor league goalie named Gay Cooley, Chapter 16. He's awesome. Who didn't wear a mask for a decade in the minors, etc. And but for a while, it was kind of like all they knew. They didn't know how to play the game any differently. It's tougher to put the mask on when you haven't had one than it is when you've just gone right through minor hockey, not wearing one. And job security was pretty precarious back then too. There was only 6 teams in the NHL, no backup goalies, so there's 6 jobs in the entire world of that description. So you don't want to lose your job. So you think, well, if I lose even 1/100th of an edge by putting a mask on, I might be in the minors next year, and good luck in Tidewater.
Interesting,
or Hershey, or Muskegon, right?
way of putting it. The one line that just cracked me up coming about this is from the Gump Worsley chapter. My face is my mask. It's the it's the title of it, and it just goes to show the mindset of some of these guys. We talk a lot about how tough hockey players are. There's not much tougher than putting your face in front of a vulcanized rubber shot of a professional hockey player.
No, you're basically a paid javelin catcher. I mean, it's such a, Gump was afraid of flying. And, statistically, what is more probable, getting injured or killed in a plane crash or getting injured by a flying puck when you're playing goal without a mask? The more dangerous thing would be to play goal without a mask, but he didn't even blink at the thought of not wearing a mask, but he was terrified to go on planes. And here, it's interesting. He was talked into wearing a mask by Cesar Maniago, who was his teammate with the Minnesota North Stars, and Cesar had started wearing a mask into the mid 60s, kind of here and there. And for a while, when he started wearing a mask, he would only wear it against Chicago, because the Hall brothers, Stan Mikita, Kenny Warm, etc. So he would only wear the mask against Chicago, and then he started wearing it against everybody else.
When he needed it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's so many goofy things like that. I could prattle on forever about them.
Fill people in on where they can find the book, how they pick it up.
Triumph Books website, triumphbooks.com. My favorite publisher to deal with of all time. They're amazing. It's also on Amazon. It's Indigo, all good booksellers. And there's a few in my trunk if you happen to run into me. So I'd be thrilled if anybody were to pick it up. It was such a joy to write something that fascinated me as a kid. And suddenly I'm on the phone talking to Bernie Perrant, Glenn Hall, Jerry Cheevers, Eddie Johnston. And the funnest, as fun as anything, was talking about talking Joe Daly, talking to the goalies that really haven't been as well known. Gay Cooley, Russ Gillow, Ian Young, Wayne Rutledge, his wife Sharon was amazing. Bob Perrill, some of the lesser known goalies had really interesting stories to tell, and they were fresher stories because they really hadn't been told in any depth before. And that was one of the really cool parts about the book too. If nothing else, go to chapter 16 and read about Gay Cooley. He's a book in himself. What a great guy.
Chico Resch does the foreword. There's a prologue involving Connor Hellebuck, a chapter on Joe Daly from Winnipeg Jets history. It's Brave Face, Wild Tales of Hockey Goaltenders in the Era Before Mass. Pick that up. Hey, Rob, before we go, of course, you're there at Mosaic. Big news today with the Bombers. Chris Streveler's coming back to the blue and gold. Everyone fired up about that. What do you expect? How crazy could free agency be in a couple of weeks when things get going?
It's, ever since the one-year contracts became in vogue, it just became crazier. I mean, people make so much about the NHL trade deadline and the NHL free agent frenzy, but that's generally a lot of B-listers moving from place to place. You're getting marquee players, and if you look at your market, you're talking about Brady Oliveira and Dalton Schoen and Jackson Jeffcoat. I mean, honestly, that is going to be so intriguing to see where some of the frontline Bombers players go. And it's going to be, and now with the Bombers signing Chris Streveler, I presume that wasn't inexpensive. So how does that affect their negotiations with players they want to re-up, or how does that affect the cash salary cap room they're going to have once the free agency window opens? So the Bombers are such an intriguing team, and obviously the Rough Riders here are intriguing to everybody across the country, it seems, and I'm as curious as anybody about how that is going to go, and what because everybody in the West has been chasing Winnipeg for a number of years now, and we're starting to see the signs that maybe the Bombers have some assets that might end up elsewhere. So where do those Bombers go? That is one of many fascinating aspects to free agency coming up. The window opens on Sunday at 11 a.m. our time and your time.
Yeah, needless to say, we'll be all over that, and there are some nervous Bomber fans to see many of these guys from just this incredible run of 4 straight Western Division championships involving 2 Grey Cup wins, as to whether they'll be able to keep some of these guys that were a big part of last year's team. Rob, great stuff. We'll need to do this again, maybe talking a little bit more CFL. But in the meantime, congratulations on the book. I'm just getting into it. I've really enjoyed what I've read so far. And gang, if you're into old-time hockey, as they say, and old-time hockey stories, Brave Face is something I think you'll really, really enjoy. Rob, thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks so much, Huss. It's an honor to be on your show, and look forward to doing it again soon. Take care.
All the best. There's Rob Vanstone out in Regina. This is a really, really fun read, gang. I'm getting into it. I made a point of jumping straight to the Joe Daily, but there's a lot of neat stuff, a lot of great stories, and Rob's an incredible writer, so highly, highly recommended. All right, we're getting into Coolbet lines before the end of the show. I did mention, everybody, that this event we're having with the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame is going to be going out, that we'll announce it tomorrow. Well, I've gotten the link. So tonight we will send something out on the to everyone that signed up for the newsletter. So if you haven't already, this is a great time. Go to Winnipeg. What do? They go to winnipegsports.com, Remis, and sign up there?
winnipegsportstalk.com. Scroll down to the bottom, and there's a form that you can just put your email.
There's a link there. Now, this event, it's going to be a special whiskey tasting. We'll have details in the event, but with the Canadian Club ambassador, Tish, who's been there since for I believe 36 years. So we're going to learn a lot about it. We'll try a number of different of the whiskeys there. It's going to be the night of the Jets-Dallas game on February 29th. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting around 6 o'clock. We'll be doing tastings beforehand. We'll have the game on a massive screen. We'll do more tastings at the intermission. I believe they're putting together, your ticket includes a little personal charcuterie put together by the folks at DeLuca's. But the bottom line on this is there's going to be less than 40 tickets available. It's $50 all in, including everything there. We'll be there hosting. We'll watch the game. We'll probably be done the whiskey part of it by about the second period, but everyone's more than welcome to stick around and watch it. So if you are interested in whiskey and want to throw a jersey on, come out at an incredible venue, the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. Get in there. Look for the announcement today. I guess we can probably put the link out right now because we do have a live link that we've got for the event that we can throw out there. I'll just grab it and I'll throw it in the chat. But the bottom line is don't wait on these tickets because all of these Winnipeg Whiskey Club events end up selling out very, very quickly. They've given us, because we're kind of doing it in conjunction with WST and Winnipeg Sport, and obviously our friends at Canadian Club, we wanted to do it. So I'm going to throw this in the chat right now. If you want to be the first one to jump on tickets before they're gone, here you go. So there's the link right now. We'll send it out to the newsletter tonight. We'll mention it to everybody on the show tomorrow. And I think in a very, very quick period of time, these are going to be gonzo. So hope to see you there. This is a little bit different than some of our other or bigger events. It'll be a smaller, more intimate group, but we can't wait. Should be a heck of a lot of fun. And again, it's on Thursday, February 29th at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame. Details right in there. Jump on it, and we'll look forward to hanging out with you and see you there. But get your tickets before they are gonzo. All right, let's get to these Coolbet lines for tonight. Let's see. What do we got here? We got 3 games in the NHL, and then that's it until the All-Star game and break. Ottawa Senators and Detroit Red Wings going at it in Detroit. Ottawa had a nice big comeback win at home against Nashville on the weekend. Detroit could really use these 2 points heading into the break. I think I am leaning Detroit. And then Remis, I don't even know what to think about this game. LA, a very, very slight road favorite. Why, I have no idea. They haven't beating anybody lately against the Nashville Predators. Kings -111, Preds -105. This is an absolutely massive game for both teams. Todd McClellan might be coaching for his job, and the Preds being there at that spot tied with LA, but having played 3 more games, definitely could use a nice regulation win to move up 2 points on the Kings. This, to me, is the big one tonight on the schedule.
Yeah, the other 2 games pretty mad. I mean, Sharks, Ducks, it's 2 bottom teams. The Senators, Red Wings, the line intrigues me. Money Puck has the Senators as a slight favorite, 53.3%, but the line here is towards the Red Wings, -112. So if you believe Money Puck, then maybe there's some value betting on the Senators, but I don't really trust their goaltending.
I'm still taking Detroit.
Yeah, I'm taking Detroit as well. I don't trust Korpisalo. They give up a ton of goals. I would go with the home teams here on the last game before the break. I mean, the Ducks playing the Sharks, who played last night with a 2-0 win. I would certainly lean the Ducks there. This Kings Preds, I don't know what's going to happen here in this one. Money Puck, again, has it as a coin flip. It's basically a pick 'em on the line. I think this must-win territory for the Kings. I'm not sure, but they're holding on to the wild card. They want to go into the break on a positive, and I would lean here. They're going with Big Save Dave in goal. Maybe that causes you to go Nashville, but that's certainly baked into the line. I'm curious what we're going to see from the Kings. That game's at 6:30 Central Time. So we'll have our eye on that one tonight as one of 3 games.
6:07. I like the Wings over the Sens. I think I might make that the play of the day for Coolbet. I like Nashville over the Kings. The Wings over the Sens, I should say, -112. Nashville over the Kings, -111. And I think I'm going to roll with the Sharks. Coming off their big win last night, I don't care about the fact that it's back-to-back. I care about home teams like St. Louis completely mailing it in heading into the break. And I think, what San Jose did last night is going to kind of boost them to really finish strong. I don't trust Anaheim at all in this game. So if you're looking for a nice long shot tonight, +157 on the Sharks. But I will direct you. We did put together a little partner parlay for the lock shop today. Taking the Red Wings on the money line to win in any fashion. The Predators to beat the Kings in any fashion. And we're going to take the Sharks on the puck line. So Sharks +1.5. So essentially, if the Sharks lose by 1, that's also a winner. When we put it in, it was +495. The guys have generously boosted it to +545. So that's there for you for the Lock Shop Partner Parlay. And as I said, I'm not forgetting about the Sharks. I am going to do a smaller amount on Wings, Nashville, and Sharks all to win. That one you can get a +850. We did the Pebble Beach picks today in the Lock Shop. Patty's got some Pebble Beach Pro-Am specials as well there. So you can get on that, but make sure you get your picks in today because they will tee off early. Although it's on the West Coast, never good to go, I want to get my picks in, and damn, the tournament's already started. So it's all there at Coolbet. Quick update on the Super Bowl line. Great time to get in on the Chiefs if you want them. The money line's up to +111 for Kansas City. San Francisco, the favorite at minus 125. Kansas City, an underdog again, plus 111. Point spread is 2. And the total points for the game is 47.5. They actually even have some Pro Bowl. Who will win the dodgeball semifinal?
What?
Yeah, dodgeball, the gridiron gauntlet, the move the chains winner, tug of war, closest to the pin. Basically just even money or minus 150 on both sides for AFC and NFC. But you can bet on the individuals in the highest precision passing competition score. Tua and CJ Stroud are 4-1. Jalen Hurts plus 425. Geno Smith plus 450. Baker Mayfield and Gardner Minshew at 5-1. So that's all there at Coolbet as well. We'll touch on. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. All of the NHL futures will be out once these games are over for tonight. So we'll let you know what the adjusted Winnipeg Jets odds are, and we'll spend a little bit more time doing that tomorrow and Friday in the Coolbet lines. And again, use the promo code WST if you haven't played a Coolbet before. And you get a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Good stuff today. People fired up about Streveler and some nice hockey convos. Great to talk to the new coach of the Goldeyes. And it was a fun visit with Rob Vanstone about his book about the maskless goalies.
That was a cool book, Brave Face. I'm sure a lot of great stories in there. And yeah, shout out to the Bombers for putting out the Streveler news on a Wednesday during the Jets week off. Well done. So got some good discussion on that. And they're going to introduce him to the media, and hopefully we can get him on here. I texted Darren with the Bombers, and hopefully the timing works out.
That is the plan. Tomorrow on the show, Ken's going to join us from the beaches of Mexico. Billick's going to jump on. On Friday, Dennis Bayak and Murata Tesh. It should be great. And huge day tomorrow for local hoops. Bisons, Westman, Duckworth Challenge. Our buddy Joey Slattery, who will be involved in the call of both games, going to be jumping on with us. And, of course, a matchup of course, Simon Hildebrand, who was the rookie star of the Seabears last year, and one of our favorites, Sean Moranin, who's the go-to guy for the U of W Westman. So we'll have Slats come on as well, and we will touch base with Sport Manitoba. Suzanne Dandino should be a great guest coming up on the program as well. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Don't forget, get those Whiskey Festival tickets. If you haven't already, I'm going to put it in one more time into the link. There it is for you. We'll send out the information in the newsletter tonight, but don't wait on those because we've only got just under 40 tickets to go, or actually more so like 30 tickets after some sponsor stuff is taken care of. So let's see out there. Should be a real fun night with our friends at Canadian Club and the Winnipeg Whiskey Festival at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame on February 29th. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Have a great night, everybody. Get outside. It's beautiful out there.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.